At sunrise, the Angeles National Forest glows with a fragile kind of beauty. Sunlight filters through the branches, touching every leaf, every shadow. It's a place where people come to breathe, to escape. But not today. This morning, the forest holds its breath. A search team moves quietly through the brush. Their radios whisper. Their boots press into soil that hasn't been touched in months. Somewhere out there, beyond the tape, beyond the silence, is the answer they've been looking for. For days, her name echoed across the airwaves. Sheylla Cabrera, a devoted mother, a bright smile, a life built from love and resilience. She was supposed to pick up her kids. She was supposed to come home. But she never did. Her family's calls went unanswered. Texts stayed unread. The silence grew heavier with every passing hour, until it became unbearable. And somewhere between hope and heartbreak, they realized something was very wrong. Detectives began to piece together her last known movements. Surveillance cameras, phone pings, witness accounts. Each clue led closer, not to a person, but to a pattern. And then everything changed. Because while the search continued here, someone else was already gone. A flight bound for Peru. A one-way ticket. And a man who didn't look back. He said he was visiting family. He said he needed time. But investigators would soon learn, this trip wasn't about distance. It was about escape. Back home, the search deepened. Officers returned to the forest. And deep in the ravine, hidden beneath branches and time, they found what they feared most. In that moment, the silence broke. And the story of a mother's disappearance became something darker. But before the headlines, before the arrest, before a husband stepped off that plane, there was Sheylla, full of life, full of plans, full of love. So who was Sheylla Cabrera? And why did her story travel halfway across the world, before anyone found the truth? Before the forest, before the headlines, before the flight, there was Sheylla. She was born in Peru, a country layered with culture, resilience, and hope. Her story began in a small neighborhood where everyone knew each other by name, where kindness wasn't an act but a way of life. From a young age, Sheylla stood out. Not for what she had, but for how she saw the world. Friends remember her as the one who always smiled first, even on the days when there wasn't much reason to. She dreamed beyond the streets she grew up on. She wanted to learn, to travel, to build something lasting, not just for herself but for her family. Those dreams carried her through long days, study sessions by candlelight, and nights spent talking about someday. And someday came sooner than she expected. When Sheylla arrived in California, it wasn't easy. New language, new culture, new city. But she didn't back away. She built her life the same way she always had, one steady step at a time. She worked, studied, learned. She made friends who became family. And even thousands of miles away from home, she never stopped calling Peru every week, checking in on her parents, laughing with her cousins, reminding them she was okay. Her warmth drew people in. At community gatherings, she was the first to greet newcomers. At work, the one who stayed late to help others finish their shift. There was a steadiness in her, a quiet kind of strength that made everyone feel safe in her presence. And somewhere in the middle of that new beginning, fate introduced her to someone who shared her roots. His name was Josimar Cabrera Cornejo. Like Sheylla, he was from Peru, chasing a version of the American dream, building a future in California. Their connection was almost instant. They spoke the same language, not just in words but in spirit. Two people far from home holding on to the same dreams. Friends say in the beginning they were inseparable. They built a life from scratch, shared meals, shared hopes, shared plans. In every photo from those early days, Sheyella's smile is wider, freer, unguarded. The kind of happiness that comes when life finally starts to feel like it's falling into place. Soon came marriage. Then children. 3 beautiful reasons to wake up every morning with purpose. Sheylla embraced motherhood the way she embraced everything else, completely. Her friends recall her juggling school drop-offs, work and bedtime stories, all while keeping that same easy smile. Her world revolved around them, the laughter, the chaos, the small moments that made a house a home. Weekends were for baking, movies, and phone calls to grandparents across the ocean. Sheyella's children were her heart, her reason, her joy. Those who knew her say she carried peace even in her busiest days. But every now and then they noticed something else, a quietness behind her smile. Moments when her eyes drifted away mid-conversation, as if her thoughts had wandered somewhere far from the room. It wasn't obvious, not at first. Life had its ups and downs and Sheylla rarely complained. If she was ever carrying a burden, she carried it silently, protecting those around her from worry. Friends described her as resilient. The kind of woman who believed every challenge had a solution. Even when she was tired, she found reasons to stay hopeful. For her children, for her home, for her dream. In the story of Sheylla Cabrera, every chapter before the tragedy is written in color, laughter, love, and perseverance. And yet, hidden between those bright pages, are faint lines that hint at what was to come. Because even in happiness, friends say, there were moments when Sheylla seemed distant, as if carrying a weight she couldn't name. Before the headlines, before the investigation, before the whispers of what happened next, there was a woman who simply wanted a life filled with love, safety, and peace. And for a time she had it. But dreams, no matter how beautiful, can sometimes hide their own shadows. And in Sheyella's story, those shadows were just beginning to move. Every story has two beginnings. One for the world to see, and another hidden beneath it. To understand what happened to Sheylla Cabrera, we must look back, not to the crime, not to the forest, but to the man who once stood beside her. His name was Josimar Cabrera Cornejo. Born in Peru, raised in a modest household filled with tradition, discipline, and expectation. Neighbors remember him as bright, respectful, and endlessly curious. He was the kind of boy who liked to fix things. Radios, bicycles, even old clocks that others had given up on. He was quick with a smile, confident, and always wanted to be seen as capable. Josimar's parents worked long hours, his father in construction, his mother selling goods in local markets. The family valued perseverance above all else. They believed hard work could solve anything. And that lesson stayed with him. By his late teens, he was already searching for something more, a life beyond the edges of the familiar. When opportunities came to travel, Josimar seized them. He left Peru with ambition in his heart, and the promise that he'd return successful, ready to provide for those he loved. Like so many who journey from one continent to another, he carried the weight of dreams too heavy for one person to hold. In California, life wasn't easy at first. He worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs, learning new systems, navigating a country that measured time in schedules and bills. But slowly things began to shift. He found community among other Peruvian immigrants, people who shared his language, his humor, his sense of nostalgia. It was within that circle of familiarity that he met Sheylla. She was vibrant, kind, full of laughter. He was focused, driven, confident. To their friends, they looked like balance. One grounding the other, 2 hearts chasing the same future. In the beginning, Josimar's charm was undeniable. He was attentive, the kind of man who noticed details, who remembered birthdays, who offered help before being asked. People liked him. He made others feel seen. He carried himself with calm authority, a quiet kind of pride that drew people in. But behind every charm there are layers. And sometimes those layers hide what we least expect. As months turned into years, friends began to notice subtle changes. Josimar grew more private, not withdrawn, just quieter about home life. He smiled the same, spoke the same, but there was something in his tone that felt different. By all accounts, he was a hard worker. He provided, he showed up, he planned for the future. But in the still moments, in between conversations, those who knew the couple best noticed a new distance. Where laughter once filled the air, silence began to linger longer. Where warmth once lived, something quieter began to settle. There are no records of explosive arguments or public disputes. Nothing dramatic, nothing that raised alarm. But close friends say that in the smallest details something shifted. Phone calls cut shorter. Social gatherings declined. Smiles that once seemed effortless began to feel practiced. People evolve in relationships. Ambition changes shape. Sometimes what begins as confidence can blur into control, not through words but through quiet patterns. Josimar was known to plan everything. Schedules. Finances. Even conversations about where they'd go or who they'd see. It wasn't possessive in obvious ways, not to outsiders. But those close to Sheylla sensed that her world was becoming smaller, day by day. When friends asked how things were at home, Sheyella's answer was always the same, "We're fine." But her tone sometimes said otherwise. One friend recalled moments when she'd pause mid-sentence, as if choosing her words carefully. And though she never spoke against him, her silence carried weight. To those around them, they remained the perfect couple, hardworking, devoted, proud of their children. There were family trips, photos filled with laughter, social media posts that looked like happiness preserved in pixels. But photos capture smiles, not silence. And silence can speak louder than anything else. As time went on, Josimar's world seemed to narrow. He kept to himself more, spoke less about work, rarely shared his thoughts beyond what was necessary. To some, he seemed simply tired, worn down by responsibility. To others, it felt like something deeper was at play, a man struggling between image and emotion. In the psychology of human behavior, control often wears many faces. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's fear. And sometimes, it's the quiet urge to keep life contained, to make sure nothing and no one ever slips away. For Josimar, friends would later say, his love for family ran deep, but so did his need for certainty. And in that space between love and control, something began to fracture. Those closest to the couple noticed their once easy laughter had grown quieter. Moments that used to echo with joy now lingered with unease, soft, invisible but impossible to ignore. No one could have predicted what would follow. Because behind that familiar smile, behind the calm exterior and quiet charm, was a story far more complex than anyone imagined. The Cabreras looked like any other family living the American dream. A mother working hard to give her children a future. A father balancing ambition with responsibility. A young couple from Peru who had crossed oceans in search of something better. From the outside, everything seemed picture perfect. School drop-offs, birthday photos, the laughter of children echoing through a small home in Lancaster. But beneath that rhythm of daily life there were pauses. Moments that only those who loved Sheylla most could see. Moments of silence that seemed to weigh heavier with time. Friends say she used to call them every evening on her way home from work. Lately, those calls had grown shorter, and sometimes they didn't come at all. In the family's social media posts, the smiles remained, but something else began to fade. The spark in her eyes, the comfort in her posture. There were glances, subtle, fleeting, that hinted at the quiet strain of someone holding too much inside. Sheylla never wanted to worry anyone. She had always been the strong one, the one who held the room together, the one who kept hope alive when others couldn't. But her friends would later say that something about her seemed different in those final weeks. She had started talking about finding herself again. About returning to school, maybe finding a new job or moving somewhere closer to her parents. Dreams that sounded ordinary, until you realized how carefully she spoke them. There were nights when she would sit alone at the kitchen table after everyone had gone to bed, scrolling through old photos, the kind of quiet reflection that only happens when you're torn between staying and starting over. For Josimar, those same months had brought their own pressures. He was working longer hours, chasing opportunities that didn't always pan out. He'd come home exhausted, frustrated, and withdrawn. The man once described as charming and confident, was now distant, sometimes lost in thought for hours. Those who knew the couple said they were still trying, still showing up for birthdays, for school events, for the moments that mattered, but the closeness had changed. What used to be effortless began to feel rehearsed. One neighbor remembered hearing laughter one evening, followed by silence so deep it felt unnatural. As the months passed, Sheylla began to confide in her mother again, carefully, gently, without detail. Just enough to say, things aren't the same. It wasn't anger she described. It was emptiness. A growing space between them that no amount of love could seem to close. Her friends noticed she'd started making lists, small, personal reminders tucked into her notebook. Call lawyer. Save receipts. Renew passport. To anyone else they might have seemed mundane. But to those who'd later pieced together her story, they were signs of a woman preparing for change. Still, she never stopped being a mother first. Every decision, every hesitation came back to her children. They were her anchor. The reason she smiled through exhaustion, the reason she stayed when others might have walked away. In early June she confided to one close friend, "I just want peace. I don't want to fight anymore." It wasn't said with fear, it was said with exhaustion. There was no single argument, no dramatic turning point. Just a slow unraveling, the kind that happens quietly until one day it's impossible to ignore. Through it all, Josimar appeared calm to outsiders. Reserved, polite, dependable. But those who spent time with him said he had grown more controlling. Subtle changes that crept into conversations. He would answer her phone for her. Decline invitations on her behalf. Make small comments about where she should or shouldn't go. Little things. But in hindsight they became part of a larger story. One of distance, restraint, and a relationship quietly losing its center. As summer approached, Sheylla began taking long drives by herself. She said she needed time to think, to breathe. Her playlist, soft Latin ballads, quiet English love songs, filled the car as she stared at the road ahead, replaying memories in her mind. Her closest friends said those drives were when she felt most herself, free if only for an hour. And in one final phone call, days before she vanished, she said something that would later haunt them. "I feel like something's about to change. I just don't know if it's good or bad." Then she laughed the same way she always did, gently like she was trying to make everyone else feel at ease. But beneath that laughter, the silence had already grown too loud. The following week, she stopped responding to messages. Her children were seen with relatives. Her car sat parked in the same spot for days. And just like that, the woman who once filled rooms with light was gone. In those first few days, no one wanted to believe it. Her friends told themselves she'd taken a trip or needed space. Her family held on to hope. But deep down they knew something wasn't right. Because Sheylla Cabrera was not the kind of person to disappear without a word. And when authorities finally began to search, when they followed the quiet trail of unanswered calls, missing documents and one unreturned plane ticket, they realized this wasn't just about a disappearance. It was about what happens when love turns quiet. When silence becomes the loudest warning of all. It was a summer morning like any other. The air was warm, sunlight stretching across the streets of Lancaster, California. Children were preparing for school, commuters filled the roads, and somewhere in that ordinary rhythm, a quiet day began. A day that would change everything. August 12, 2025. The last time anyone would ever see Sheylla Cabrera alive. Her morning began early as it often did. A few text messages to friends, light, routine, nothing unusual. One message read simply, "Busy today? I'll call later." It was a phrase she had used countless times before, but this time the call never came. By midday, she was seen briefly near her neighborhood. Surveillance footage from a nearby store captured her car, a familiar silver sedan, pulling into a parking lot. She seemed calm, alone. There was no sign of distress, no hint of what was to come. And then, nothing. No phone activity. No messages. No trace. At first, no one panicked. Maybe her phone had died, maybe she was busy with errands. Friends left voice messages filled with small talk. "Call me when you can." But by evening, when her children hadn't heard from her and her family couldn't reach her, unease began to grow. The next morning, those same friends called again. Still no answer. Her social media remained silent. Her location services, once always on, had gone dark. It wasn't like her. Not at all. Sheylla was the kind of person who checked in. Even during her busiest days, she always found a moment to message, to reassure, to stay connected. For her to vanish without a word meant something was deeply wrong. That evening, her family gathered at her home. The lights were off. Her car was parked in the driveway. Inside, everything looked undisturbed, phone charger still plugged in, personal items untouched. But Sheylla was nowhere to be found. And neither, it seemed, was her husband. When relatives reached out to Josimar, his responses were brief and inconsistent. "She went out with friends. She's visiting someone. She needed space." But every version of the story changed slightly. The times, the reasons, the tone. Friends grew alarmed. Something wasn't adding up. By the second day, August 14th, the Cabrera family reported Sheylla missing. Detectives from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department took the case, quickly recognizing that the timeline didn't make sense. The last verified sighting of Sheylla was that quiet morning on August 12th. After that, she seemed to vanish completely. No bank activity, no phone pings, no social media presence. Investigators began retracing her steps. They pulled camera footage from gas stations, store parking lots, and traffic intersections. They checked her cell records, her credit cards, and her messages. And slowly, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Her phone had stopped transmitting data around noon, near the outskirts of town, close to a rural highway leading north. The same direction, detectives later learned, that her husband had been traveling that day. When investigators tried to reach him, he was evasive. He claimed he didn't know where Sheylla had gone, that maybe she'd needed time to herself. But detectives found that difficult to believe, especially when they discovered his car missing from the driveway, and his passport no longer in the house. 2 days later, a report surfaced. Josimar Cabrera Cornejo had boarded a flight, not from Los Angeles, but from a smaller airport hours away. His destination, Peru. The timing was unmistakable. While friends and family searched for Sheylla, while detectives were just beginning to assemble the first clues, her husband was already thousands of miles away, crossing borders, disconnecting phones, withdrawing cash, and erasing his digital trail. Authorities moved quickly. A missing person case became a potential international investigation. But still, the most pressing question remained unanswered. Where was Sheylla? Her mother, speaking through tears in an early interview, said softly, "I feel her. I know she's trying to come home." 4 days, volunteers searched parks, fields, and desert roadsides near Lancaster. Flyers with her smiling photo appeared on light poles, storefronts, and social media pages. Community members gathered in prayer vigils, lighting candles at dusk, refusing to let her name fade into silence. Then came a breakthrough. On August 20th, detectives reviewed a crucial piece of surveillance, a traffic camera near the Angeles National Forest. It captured a vehicle resembling Josimar's, the same make, same color, heading toward a remote access road. The timestamp? Hours after Sheyella's phone had gone dark. It wasn't proof, not yet. But it was the first concrete lead. Investigators immediately focused their search on that area, a vast, rugged stretch of forest where the city's noise fades into quiet wind and endless trees. For several days, search teams combed the terrain. Helicopters circled overhead, ground units moved through steep trails, and cadaver dogs were brought in. And then, amid the vast expanse of wilderness, they found something. A single item. Something that belonged to Sheylla. Detectives went silent. Search perimeters widened. And though the official confirmation would take days, the tone of the investigation changed instantly. This was no longer just a missing persons case. It was something far more devastating. By the time the world would learn what had happened, the story had already crossed continents. In Peru, news stations reported that a man connected to a missing woman in California was being sought by international authorities. Back in California, the community waited, clinging to hope, praying for answers, and wondering how a woman so full of love could simply disappear. Then came the revelation that would stop everyone cold. When police checked that one crucial camera, the one facing the narrow forest road, they found something they couldn't ignore. The same car seen entering the area on August 12 never came back out. The search for Sheylla Cabrera was no longer about hope. It was about answers. Detectives, volunteers, and family members stood united by one purpose: to uncover what had really happened in those missing hours between her last sighting and the moment her husband boarded a plane. The forest had spoken in whispers, hints of evidence, fragments of a trail, but it would take skill, patience, and determination to make sense of it. In the days following her disappearance, investigators returned to the Cabrera home in Lancaster. Every inch was examined: the living room, the car, the shared spaces where family memories had once lived. Nothing appeared disturbed. But as detectives often say, absence can be evidence too. Her phone, wallet, and identification were still inside. So were her travel documents, all except one passport, the one that belonged to Josimar Cabrera Cornejo. He was now thousands of miles away. Detectives turned to surveillance, a digital trail that rarely lies. They began with the couple's apartment complex. Security footage showed an ordinary night leading up to August 12th. Cars entering, neighbors walking dogs, porch lights flickering on and off. But one camera, an aging model mounted above the rear parking area, captured something that made investigators pause. At around 2:30 a.m., a figure moved across the screen. The image was grainy, the face obscured, but the outline was unmistakable: someone moving a large, heavy object toward a parked vehicle. The timestamp flickered. Seconds skipped. The light was dim, but the motion, deliberate. Detectives slowed the footage frame by frame. The shape of the car matched the Cabrera's vehicle. The time, just hours before Sheyella's phone went silent. It wasn't conclusive, but it was enough to shift the investigation from uncertainty to urgency. Meanwhile, phone records told another part of the story. Between midnight and dawn, Sheyella's phone connected briefly to a tower near her neighborhood. Then nothing. Hours later, data from Josimar's phone pinged near a different tower, much farther north, along a rural route leading toward the Angeles National Forest. The same area where her vehicle was later spotted on traffic cameras. Investigators began mapping the timeline. 10 p.m., neighbors recall lights still on at the Cabrera home. 2:30 a.m., movement captured in the parking area. 6 a.m., phone signal lost. 9 a.m., car seen heading north. Noon, complete silence. The pattern was emerging, one that linked home, vehicle, and forest in a narrow window of time. Detectives followed every digital breadcrumb they could find. GPS logs from gas stations showed purchases made along that same route in the early morning hours: fuel, water, and a single transaction that matched Josimar's card. By then, the community had begun to mobilize. Flyers covered streetlights and bulletin boards, online groups coordinated searches, and television crews gathered outside police headquarters. Each day the pressure grew. Each hour without news felt like another step away from hope. Her mother made a tearful plea on local television: "If anyone saw anything, please help bring my daughter home." Detectives too felt that urgency. They expanded the search radius. Drones scanned miles of rugged forestland while K9 units followed scent trails through rocky paths and dense brush. In one search log, a note stood out: possible activity near mile marker 47. Scent detected, faint but present. Still, the weather, terrain, and time made progress slow. Then came the call that would change everything. Forensic analysts reviewing the traffic footage discovered a crucial frame, one that had initially gone unnoticed. It showed the same car leaving the couple's neighborhood earlier than previously thought, closer to 4 a.m. The timestamp was faint but legible. This meant the person who left had nearly a 2-hour head start before sunrise, plenty of time to reach the forest roads before daylight. That detail narrowed the search zone dramatically. Investigators focused on a network of unpaved trails near the mountain edge, accessible only by locals or those familiar with the area. It was remote, quiet, and easily overlooked, the kind of place few would stumble upon by accident. As search teams pushed deeper into that terrain, they discovered traces consistent with a vehicle recently driven through. Tire impressions, partial but distinct. Forensic teams documented everything, marking evidence with quiet precision. At the same time, detectives worked with international partners. In Lima, Peru, authorities confirmed Sheylla Cabrera's arrival days earlier. He had checked into a hotel briefly, then moved between addresses, until news of the investigation reached him. By then, U.S. officials had issued a warrant for questioning. His name was now listed internationally as a person of interest. But back in California, the investigation pressed on, carefully, methodically, compassionately. No one wanted to believe what they might find, but everyone knew what the signs pointed to. Each clue was a whisper of truth, slowly coming into focus. In a police briefing, one detective described it best: "We're building a story backward, from silence to sound, from shadows to light." That story reached its most emotional moment when one of the search teams radioed in from deep within the Angeles National Forest. The transmission was short, calm, professional. But everyone listening could feel the weight behind the words. They had found something, evidence that connected directly to Sheylla Cabrera. What followed was handled with utmost care. The forest was closed off, forensic tents erected, and specialists brought in. Every inch was photographed, logged, and analyzed. The scene told a story without words, one of distance, isolation, and heartbreak. Detectives didn't rush to conclusions. They worked through each detail, allowing science to speak for itself. The goal was truth, not speculation. When they emerged from the forest that evening, silence followed. Reporters gathered at the edge of the scene, cameras rolling, but the officials said only what needed to be said. The search for Sheylla Cabrera has taken a new direction. That night, candles were lit again across Lancaster. Families gathered, whispering prayers under their breath. The community that had spent weeks hoping for her safe return now faced the reality they had feared the most. The next morning, law enforcement officially reclassified the case. What began as a missing person report was now a criminal investigation. When investigators uncovered evidence in the Angeles National Forest, one truth became undeniable: Sheylla Cabrera's disappearance was no longer a mystery, it was a tragedy. But just as that truth began to take shape in California, another story was unfolding thousands of miles away. A story of distance, flight, and a desperate race against time. In the days immediately following the discovery, law enforcement made a troubling realization. While search teams had been combing through forest trails, Sheylla Cabrera Cornejo was already gone. He hadn't vanished quietly. He'd left the country, and he hadn't left alone. Flight records confirmed it. Within hours of initial questioning by detectives, Sheylla had boarded a plane bound for Lima, Peru, accompanied by the couple's 3 children. To the outside world, it seemed like a father protecting his family. To those who knew the timeline, it looked like an escape. As the story broke, headlines swept across California: "Missing mother's husband flees country with children." The words echoed through television broadcasts, online forums, and social media feeds. What had begun as a local search for a missing mother was now an international investigation spanning continents. Detectives in Los Angeles moved fast. They issued an international alert through Interpol, a red notice, requesting assistance from Peruvian authorities. For the Cabrera family, the news was almost too much to bear. They had lost their daughter, and now her children, their grandchildren, were half a world away, caught in the middle of something they couldn't understand. Her mother spoke softly through tears during a televised plea: "Please just bring them home. They've lost their mother. They can't lose everything." The footage of that moment, her trembling hands holding a photograph of Sheylla surrounded by the smiling faces of her children, struck a chord around the world. International viewers, many of them parents themselves, began sharing the story online. The hashtag justiceforsheylla started trending in both English and Spanish. In Lima, Peruvian journalists picked up the case. News broadcasts showed Josimar stepping off the plane, calm and composed, children by his side. The coverage framed it as a developing mystery, a man returning home amid unanswered questions. But what the cameras didn't capture was the growing network of communication forming quietly between two countries. Law enforcement agencies, diplomatic channels, and child protection services all working together, driven by the urgency of time and truth. U.S. authorities provided everything they had: surveillance footage, phone records, digital evidence. Peruvian officials responded swiftly, dispatching officers to verify his location and ensure the children's safety. For several tense days, the story held its breath. Would he disappear again? Would he turn himself in? Or would this case, like so many others, stall in the gray space between borders? Then came the first major breakthrough. Peruvian officials, acting on intelligence from California investigators, located the children. They were found safe, unharmed, and placed into protective care. It was a rare moment of relief amid weeks of grief and confusion. Sheyella's family, speaking through their attorney, released a short statement. "We are grateful beyond words that the children are safe. They are her light, her legacy." But even in that relief, questions lingered. Where was Josimar? Would he face justice? And would he surrender willingly, or would authorities have to find him? In Lima, news outlets tracked every update. Cameras followed law enforcement vehicles through crowded streets, reporters camped outside government buildings, and speculation grew by the hour. Behind the scenes, quiet diplomacy unfolded. U.S. officials worked through the State Department, while Interpol maintained direct communication with Peruvian police. Every step had to be precise, every move legally coordinated between nations. Then, in a move that caught even reporters off guard, Sheylla Cabrera made contact with authorities. He agreed to surrender. It wasn't a confession, not yet, but it was a turning point. Under the watch of Peruvian law enforcement, he walked calmly into a government building in central Lima. Cameras captured him entering, hands clasped, head down, the same way he had left California. Quiet, expressionless, unreadable. The images dominated international news. Fugitive husband and missing mother case surrenders in Peru. For the investigators in California, it was validation. For the Cabrera family, it was bittersweet. Their daughter's story had crossed oceans, and now, finally, so had the first step toward accountability. In the coming days, Peruvian and U.S. officials would begin discussions about extradition, a long and careful process that could take months. But for the first time since August 12, there was movement. A sense that Sheyella's voice, silenced in life, was finally being heard. Her mother later said through quiet sobs, "He tried to run but love followed him. She will be heard even across borders." And she was right. The case had grown beyond one family's heartbreak. It had become a symbol, a reminder that truth, no matter how far it travels, doesn't disappear. It waits. It follows. And sometimes, it crosses oceans to be found. As the episode closes, the image lingers. A plane descending through clouds, a family photo framed in soft light, and a single line of narration. He left behind a trail of silence, but the world was listening. It was a cold morning in Lima, August 27, 2025. The city was waking to its usual rhythm, street vendors calling out, taxis threading through traffic, the hum of daily life. But inside one government building in the heart of the capital, something far less ordinary was unfolding. After nearly 2 weeks of uncertainty, Sheylla Cabrera, the man at the center of the international search, quietly surrendered to Peruvian authorities. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic words. Just a slow walk through a doorway, the flash of cameras, and the unmistakable sound of handcuffs closing. It was the moment Sheyella's family had been waiting for, not out of vengeance but out of a deep need for closure. For answers. For the return of accountability. News spread fast across both countries. From Los Angeles to Lima, television anchors repeated the same headline: "Husband of missing California mother surrenders to Peruvian police." In Lancaster, candles still burned outside Sheyella's home. Neighbors gathered quietly as the story reached them, some whispering prayers, others standing in silence. For the first time since her disappearance, there was a sense that the truth was beginning to move, that justice, though slow, was finally finding its way. Authorities in Peru confirmed the surrender within hours. The U.S. Embassy in Lima immediately began coordinating with Peruvian officials, setting into motion the complex process of extradition. a legal bridge between nations. For many viewers unfamiliar with that process, investigators offered clarity: extradition isn't instant. It's a series of deliberate, legal steps designed to protect both nations' laws while ensuring accountability. Los Angeles County prosecutors formally filed their case, submitting documentation to Peruvian courts. It marked the start of what could become months of proceedings: hearings, document exchanges, diplomatic negotiations. Every step required precision. Every signature, every statement had to be verified. For the Cabrera family, it was an emotional balancing act. They were grateful, yet aware that the road ahead would be long. Her sister spoke softly to reporters. "We don't want revenge. We want truth. We want her story to mean something." Across Peru, journalists revisited the couple's shared past. Two dreamers who left home together in search of a better life, now separated by choices that could never be undone. It was a story that resonated deeply in both nations, a cautionary tale about trust, resilience, and the importance of recognizing unseen struggles within families. And yet, despite the growing public conversation, the official tone of the investigation remained steady, professional, and respectful. Law enforcement representatives from both countries maintained focus on the facts: digital evidence, travel records, surveillance timelines. Each detail helping to piece together the quiet tragedy behind Sheyella's disappearance. Back in California, the community continued to gather. Vigils were held not only to mourn but to raise awareness, for women facing silent struggles, for families navigating loss, for those left behind. Outside the Lancaster City Hall, a small crowd formed under soft evening light. Candles flickered against framed photographs of Sheylla, her smile, her children, the life she had built. One friend spoke into the microphone, her voice shaking. She believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in kindness. "If she could see all of us here tonight, I think she'd just want people to be safe, to speak up, to reach out." That sentiment echoed through the coverage that followed. Across social media, the story was no longer just about the investigation. It had become a movement. A reminder of the quiet realities that too many families face, and the importance of community awareness and prevention. Organizations advocating for family safety began citing Sheyella's story in their outreach programs. Posters appeared with her name beside messages of hope. For Sheylla, for every voice that deserves to be heard. In Lima, the extradition proceedings entered a new stage. Legal representatives for both nations met to review documentation, confirm evidence authenticity, and outline timelines. While cameras remained outside the courthouse, the heart of the story shifted inward, to the quiet determination of those seeking resolution. The cooperation between the two countries became a testament to how modern justice can transcend borders when driven by compassion and persistence. Even the Peruvian prosecutor overseeing the case commented during a press conference, "This is not only a matter of law, it's a matter of humanity. Our nations share a commitment to truth." The quote traveled across networks, translated and repeated on television screens in both Spanish and English. As the extradition moved forward, Sheyella's mother continued to attend every vigil, every gathering, often holding her grandchildren's photos close to her heart. When asked what justice meant to her now, she answered quietly, "Justice means we remember her. It means we protect others from what happened to her. It means we don't stop speaking her name." Her words became the emotional centerpiece of news specials and short documentaries that began to appear online, spreading awareness about family safety and the importance of early intervention. By late September, legal analysts explained to viewers that extradition could still take time, possibly months, but that the process was active and advancing. Los Angeles County confirmed that upon his return, Josimar would face charges related to Sheyella's disappearance and death, pending the full completion of Peruvian legal review. No dramatization, no sensationalism, just the clear, methodical pursuit of justice. And through it all, one truth remained. As the narrator's tone softens, the music swells. Across borders, through courts, and beyond headlines, Sheyella's story has become more than a case file. It's a voice that endures, a reminder that silence never truly wins. The scene fades into footage of candles glowing under a night sky, a mother's photograph resting beside flowers, and the distant sound of a community choir singing softly in the background. The wheels of justice may turn slowly, but for Sheylla Cabrera, they are finally in motion. Her light, once dimmed, continues to guide the way. Morning sunlight spills across the Angeles National Forest, the same place where this story began. The wind moves softly through the trees, and for a moment, the forest feels different, lighter. As if the earth itself remembers the name whispered there, Sheylla. Months have passed since her disappearance first made headlines. What remains now is not only the story of loss, but of legacy. Her family speaks of her often, not through tears anymore but through smiles. They remember her laughter, the kind that filled rooms before she even said a word. They remember how she loved coffee in the morning, how she danced with her children in the kitchen, and how she believed that kindness was a kind of strength. One of her friends shared in an interview, "Sheylla was the person who made you feel seen even on your worst days. You couldn't stay sad around her." That memory, her ability to heal with presence, has become the heart of everything that followed. Her children, now safe and surrounded by family, are rebuilding. Protected, nurtured, and reminded every day of their mother's love. Counselors, teachers, and relatives describe them as resilient, brave beyond their years. They carry fragments of their mother's spirit in their laughter, their art, their small but powerful gestures of hope. Her sister, who became their guardian, said in one quiet moment, "We'll tell them stories of who she was, not how she left but how she lived. That's the story they deserve." In Lancaster, candles continue to burn outside her home, though the crowds have gone. Now it's a place of quiet reflection. Neighbors pass by, leaving flowers, notes, or simply standing still for a moment. Sometimes it's children from the local school. Sometimes it's complete strangers who heard her story online and felt compelled to come. But this isn't only remembrance, it's movement. Her closest friends launched a small community effort in her name, Sheyella's Light. It began as a local support circle for families facing hardship, then grew into a wider awareness campaign, workshops, school visits, partnerships with local organizations. Their mission, to teach compassion, to encourage open conversations about safety and emotional support, to make sure that no one who feels trapped, unheard, or uncertain ever has to face silence alone. Every gathering begins the same way, with her favorite song playing softly in the background, and a photo of Sheylla smiling beside a single candle. A volunteer coordinator described it perfectly: her light doesn't just exist in memory. It exists in the people who choose to do good because of her. Her story has also reached beyond her hometown. Across the US and Peru, journalists, advocates, and educators cite her case as a moment of awakening, a reminder of the importance of listening when someone says they're struggling, and of recognizing the signs of hidden pain. Internationally, the case became an example of how cooperation between nations can save lives. Peruvian and American authorities, working side by side, ensured that justice moved forward without delay. It was a message to the world that truth has no borders and compassion can bridge oceans. For law enforcement officers who worked on the case, it became personal. Some have since joined community outreach programs, speaking at events about the importance of early intervention, family awareness, and mental health resources. At one such event, a detective said quietly into the microphone, "We often meet people at their worst moments. But Sheyella's story reminded us that behind every case file, there's a heartbeat, a mother, a daughter, a dream. It's that heartbeat that continues to echo. Through classrooms, living rooms, and social media feeds, people speak her name not with sorrow but with resolve." In Peru, her cousins hold annual gatherings combining prayer and celebration. They share food, music, and stories, often ending the night with lanterns released into the sky, hundreds of tiny lights drifting upward, carrying a message across continents. You are remembered. You are loved. The image of those lights, floating softly against the night, mirrors the message of her legacy. Because Sheyella's Light isn't just about one woman. It's about the countless people who, in silence, face challenges the world never sees. It's about bringing awareness to the power of empathy, about asking, "Are you okay?" and meaning it. In a world that often rushes past pain, her story became a pause, a collective moment to breathe, reflect, and care. By the time this documentary ends, thousands of viewers will have heard her name. And if even one person finds courage or comfort because of it, then Sheyella's light continues to shine. The screen fades to a montage, her children laughing at the park, a sunset over the forest, a flicker of candlelight in the dark. Some stories end in silence. But others, like Sheyella's, become something greater. A reminder that compassion is not weakness, that truth can travel across borders, and that even in loss, love endures. Pause. The music swells softly, piano and strings. For every life that ends in silence, there are voices willing to tell the story, to make sure it never happens again. The candlelight flickers one last time. The screen glows softly with her photograph, the smile that once brightened every room, now illuminating hearts across continents. Sheyella's story is more than tragedy. It's a call, A quiet but powerful reminder of what can happen when voices unite, when compassion becomes action, and when we choose to care before it's too late. Every share, every comment, every moment spent remembering her helps her light reach farther. To someone who may be silently struggling tonight, to a family searching for hope, to a world that needs more empathy than ever before. Because stories like this are not told to reopen wounds, they're told to build understanding, to inspire awareness, and to protect others from walking the same path in silence. So, if Sheyella's story touched you, share it. Tell someone. Start a conversation. Not just to remember her, but to honor every person whose story still waits to be told. This is how awareness grows, through compassion, through truth, through voices that refuse to fade. We tell these stories not for the darkness they contain, but for the light they leave behind. If you believe in that light, in empathy, justice, and remembrance, then stay with us. Subscribe, share, and help us continue to tell the stories that matter. Stories of truth. Stories of hope. Stories that remind us that even in silence, there are still whispers that guide us toward understanding. For Sheylla Cabrera, and for every voice that deserves to be heard.